So what's up, guys? It's Mark from Menace TV, and I got one of my mentors here, and I really want you guys to pay attention to this episode. He has a lot of knowledge. He has not only helped and taught me, but so many countless creatives, entrepreneurs within the city. He's a man of the arts, culture, and also family, community. There's so many great values about this guy that I'm about to show you guys, and I'm very excited for you to see this episode. So without further ado, Michael Reyes. How you doing, man?
I mean, hopefully we use some of that video. Yeah, so I run We Are Culture Creators. I'm one of the co-directors. There's another director named Elizabeth Stone who, was one of the founders. And Culture Creators was really almost like a survival mechanism for me. It became you could never judge how things happen in life. I did this show in Saginaw when I was 19 for free, where I did this poetry show because I was trying to become a poet, whatever that meant. Mm-hmm. And when I was 19, this woman was in the audience from this organization called the United States Hispanic Leadership Institute. She said, "Hey, you should come to Chicago and perform your poetry at this talent show that we have during the conference." I'm like, "Oh, bet." So, I did that. In that audience from the show from Saginaw led me to Chicago. There was somebody there that was part of a fraternity, and that fraternity dude stayed in contact with me from 2001 to 2013. Follow my work. It was then social media popped up, and he was like, "Hey, I got a friend that wants to invite you to Jackson State Prison to speak." And so I did that, and I think it was my second visit.
How did that go?
That was probably the best performance that I've ever had, just because those guys are so hungry. They don't get a lot of opportunity to see anything different.
Interesting.
And then the type of poetry I do kind of speaks to some of those issues of social justice, of community, but sitting there was this woman named Elizabeth, and because of that decision I did, and when I was 19 in 1999, we connected. Now you fast forward to 2024, and we have this whole organization, and it's kind of was put into a perspective that I, really put into play to meet her in 2019, which is crazy. 1999. Mm-hmm. So when you think about it, 1999 to now, 25 years or so, all of that was put into play when I was a 19-year-old, right? Because of one decision led to another decision, led to another decision, led to me meeting her, led to us creating an organization and stemming all these beautiful things, right? And it's always a work in progress. But I created Culture Creators because I came out of a nonprofit organization that I loved and was really close to me, but didn't really leave with anything. When I left that organization in Chicago, I was kind of redefining myself again, and I was looking for something and didn't know what it was. I had another company that I was trying to start. I did a gallery that failed. I did a second gallery that failed. And then there was this company called Creative Control, which Dame Dash was associated with. And I watched these guys, and they were doing videos for Currency and Erykah Badu and I think Black Star. And I really loved the idea of this visual piece. They would shoot music videos. They're still up, too. They're the dudes that did the Kanye documentary on Netflix.
Oh, for real?
I believe it's the same guys. So, or one of them is associated. So, if you look up Creative Control, they're just a video, I guess back then called vlog, right? Kind of thing. So the CC, Culture Creators, was something that I had put in a poem. And I was like, oh yeah, Culture Creators. We're creating culture. We're the creators of culture. This is before we were even using the word culture like that, it was really early. When you say for the culture, we have an understanding of what that means. But back then, it was still pretty early. I'm sure other people were using it, so it was influencing what I wanted to create. And so the logo for Culture Creators is a hand with the flame, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason it's the hand with the flame is that, the creative part of our mind is the cerebral part, is the spirit. It's the fire, right? That's the fire in the logo, which I have tattooed on my face.
I see.
That's the spiritual part, the mental part, the creative part, the energy part, the passionate part. But you can have all of that and all of those ideas to build the pyramids, but without your hands and physically building them as humans, we don't create. Now, some of us have both. Some of us are limited, and we contribute in another way or the other. But to be human is to be creative, right? I'm really into Stone Age art. and thinking about, our ancestors 40,000, 50,000 years ago were creating art, right? And leaving this, and regardless of whether we think it was this deeper spiritual meaning to everything, it's also that as humans, we like things that are beautiful aesthetically.
100%.
Right? And so there's this other part of just like, bro, that's a pretty rock, right? I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to try to put it in a necklace.
That's very interesting. I had no idea that was like what the logo had stood for, but to combine like the element of like a hand to building that part of the spirit into like the actual world that's insane. I really like that.
Yeah. So I think for us, like what happens is because we kind of do parties that are popular, like the thin line between fine art and folk art is very thin. We say it's fine art because we can put it in a museum and it's a Picasso. Mm-hmm. But what is the difference of somebody painting paintings in Eastern Market that's continuously painting things that you can sell, right, and consume? So a lot of times in our work, because Culture Creators does commercial popular art, it isn't always looked at and necessarily thought as a deeper level of like fine art. But all of the foundation of our work, if I had to say, at least from my perspective, goes back to the Zapatistas in Mexico. It goes back to different African practices in West Africa, which are carried over into the Caribbean, which are in these maroon communities, these societies that were kind of left alone on their own to be creative, to create things out of trash and garbage and leftover pieces of shipwrecks and wood. And so it goes back for us in this tradition of rebuilding, of recreating. That's why a lot of our stuff we build with trash. We rebuild, we repurpose, we recycle, we upcycle. Now they call it, right? Because it's a fancy word for it, to upcycle. But back when we were coming up as kids, or at least for me, right, that upcycle didn't really exist as a word. You just taking stuff and rebuilding it and making it cool, right?
Yeah.
So I think as culture creators, we follow in this tradition that goes back. It's ancient, right? It's this ancient tradition. And if you want to go really far back for us, like one of our first expressions as humans is to sit around a fire, the flame that's in our logo. We would sit around a fire and tell stories. And we would sit around the fire and create myths. We'd sit around the fire and create the narrative that is our ethical code for each other. Mm-hmm. So the flame also represents this traditional, very kind of deeper space for why we create, right? Because to create for art's sake, there's like different conversations about like creating for artists. A lot of modern art, it's hard to process, right? Because you might have seen one of those paintings that's just white, right? Mm. Oh, it's just a white painting, and it's like, what is this meaning, right? But we don't know, like, was that pigment created a certain way? Are there actually other tones in it? What does it really represent? And I do think there's just art because we like to make some cool stuff. Yeah. But I also think as humans, though, that's an expression of our humanity. Yeah. At whatever level it is.
100%. You know, it was interesting. You brought up this is like how you guys like create beyond even just art. It's like the entire event is how you said ancient. Like I never even like thought of it in that perspective. But now that I'm thinking of it, like the fact that like every single element, I seen you build like a stage, banners, sign, like any and every single element of an event.
I mean, what's our first instruments? Probably drums, hitting stuff together maybe. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think there's a flute that was discovered that's like, I don't know, 37,000 years old. But think about our first instruments, and we still dance to drums.
Yeah, 100%.
Like if you're quiet enough, you can hear your heartbeat as a drum. To be able to walk like on two legs, you have to have a certain rhythm, right? You just have to in order to be able to balance and walk. To be able to walk like across a room, you have to be able to have a certain rhythm. Yeah. So then what's the next step? Is like moving in rhythm. Then what's the next step? Dancing. Then what's the next step? Dancing with each other. So I think like when we curate an event, the psychology of it is also to understand how humans interact with space. And then for us is how somebody that's maybe like Gen Z, edge of millennial, react in space. So your social media generation, right? How are they going to react to post that space? How are they going to share it? What is the visual? What are we saying with the images we paint? Like we do a lot of like, especially for Fiesta House, culturally relevant pieces that we put up as art. but how does a person interact? Like one of the things that Liz does really well is like to create public space. Like how are we going to sit? Are we going to sit over here? Are we going to face each other? All of that stuff is thought out. You can simply put a log down for people to sit on, or you can put 3 so people have to kind of sit around, right? So there's differences in how you can create space. So I think part of our events are that too. And then our nonprofit side is really, nuts and bolts is just trying to help young people find their humanity and be able to make a living from the work they love to do.
Yeah, 100%.
And that could mean a lot of things. It's still very loosely based. I mean, it could mean mentorship. It can mean like the space we're sitting in now, right? Like I met y'all before you were really an established company.
100%. Before it was even a company.
You know what I mean, though? So like that's the point, though. The goal is like not that you're under our work forever. It's that, there's 20 different groups that are born out of our work, 20 different producers, 20 different rappers, 20 different painters, and they're all doing something. It doesn't even matter what, like at what level. To me, that's not even the point, right? The point is that they're doing something.
100%.
And that the people are good people. I think that's the most important thing, that people are good people.
Yeah. And I think how you highlighted mentorship, like I'm a huge believer in mentorship. Like it saved my life, to be honest. It's like we need that as a generation. Like the people around our community that's showing us like how to do these things, like it's life changing, to be honest, to be able to see how to do business, not have to walk into every single mistake. So let me ask you this too. I'm very curious about the DR trip. Like what was that whole process like? What did you guys do throughout the trip? Like how was that? The activities, the programs?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us right now, the idea of young people being able to experience the world outside of like their physical space is important. Like the transformative, so let's say this, we'll say the DR, but also let's talk about Paris. Let's talk about Berlin, London, Morocco, Puerto Rico, because these are all places, Mexico. But I think the process for the Dominican Republic that's different for us is that we're working with like an established family from there. And that, when you talk about like the African diasporic, and I don't want to speak to it, Liz speaks better about this than I do, but this is just going from what I understand. The African diasporic and also Latin American experience for us is really tied to a shared root. Right? Like, what is the difference between communities in Haiti, here in Detroit, in Mississippi, right? In Brazil, in St. Croix, and the Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico, right? That are all Black folks. There's always going to be some level of differences, languages, but what happens is there's still a similar root. And so the DR gives us an opportunity for young folks from Detroit to reconnect to the land, to be in nature, but also to understand sustainable practices, because the future of our planet depends on the ability of us to be able to use resources in a wise way.
Yeah, 100%.
And I'll be the first, bro. I'm a very wasteful person, right? But after experiencing like Dominican Republic and the work that Liz is doing there, and by proximity, some of our work, thinking about like what are we going to leave the next generation, and how are we going to be able to survive in a way that uses the ecology around us, and how can we do it in a responsible and sustainable way. And then, the goal is for young people to come back and do that here, right? Like to learn some of that process. I think we're so disconnected, and I'll say that too. Like I was making a joke. We were at a restaurant on the way back from the DR, and no, actually we were back here. We were in Greek time. We were talking, me and one of my friends, and EJ, my boy Peter from Chicago, and I was talking about, bro, working the fields is not something I want to do. Like I grew up doing that. That is not anything I want to do. And one of the waiters just came up and said, yeah, me neither, bro. Like my girl wants me to grow a garden, and I grew up, he was Mexican, he was Chicano. And it was funny, right? That connection about like both of us having this trauma. But what we were working was a industrial farm, which is very different than a cunuco, which is like cunuco, right? How you say that, cunuco? Cunuco. which is like a natural kind of growing garden and homestead. So we have that, which would be like you grow the bananas, and then there's other vegetables that can grow in tandem under it, and they feed each other in the soil. I don't know all of that. That's not my expertise. What I do know is that was an amazing, like an amazing farm to see. Like we had that traditional farming, but also like obviously, you know, Liz, it's not a garden, it's a farm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So to me, that was what was amazing. And I think like being able to bring young people into those experiences is what's exciting for us. And some of those young people will come back, just like y'all have a studio here. Some of those young people will come back and have a farm. Just by numbers and by what we do and the nature of our work, they will. And at some point, if we do our job right in the Dominican Republic, there might be 6 or 7 young people that come back and have farms across Detroit.
That's insane. That's crazy.
Well, think about our work at Culture Creators. How many artists have like not come out of Culture Creators, but have got resources and gone on to do their own thing? How many people would you say? 100?
A lot, yeah.
200?
100%.
So if you think of it that way, at some point, if we do our work right, that's what's going to happen. And some people will stay there and some people will find other places. And I just know from the nature of work doing it, like in Chicago, I got a bunch of young people that work for NBC and have Emmy nominations and Grammy nominations, just because at a certain level, if you're doing something at a high level that's important with love and passion and there's a strategy to it, you're going to produce and help produce another generation of people that will do that at a higher level than yourself, right? Yeah. Like I was a pretty good artist, a pretty good poet, but it always makes me happy when I see young people that I help mentor doing those things at a higher level than me. Mm-hmm. Doesn't make me envious, makes me happy. Only because I felt pretty fulfilled in my own work, right?
100%.
And then there's still a level of competition that you want to be able to like show like, hey, I still got it. But creatively, I think if we do our job right with all of these trips, right, there'll be sets of young people, you know, traveling and experiencing the world in a different way. The reason for me even having to drive to take young people on tour was because I wanted to be able to, and this was like before we even had a program, was I knew how important it was for me to be on the road. Like I knew how important it was for me to be able to do a show in New York, to do a show in Chicago, to do a show in LA. And the craziest thing, even as an adult, bro, when I was in London last year, I felt really sad and happy at the same time. I was like, why did I never do a show in London before I was like, you know, in my 40s? Like, why? The only reason is I had a layer of a block to not see it as an opportunity to be that was possible.
Interesting.
I speak English, bro. They speak English. I should have been able to do multiple performances in London in my 20s. I just never knew it was a possibility.
I see what you're saying.
And now we have young people saying, yo, I could go to Europe and tour. I could do a show in Paris. I could do a show in London. I could do a show in Madrid. I could do a show in the Netherlands. So that comes out of, for me, that comes out of like helping young people get the confidence.
Yeah, most definitely.
To break that barrier, to see that it's even possible.
100%. Going to Paris, like on that trip, it changed my entire life. I can honestly say, like, I don't even, it 100% contributed to like my success of right now, our success of now of this company. You know what I'm saying? Like just being there, like I never even thought I would ever be out of the country in my 20s. You know, I've never like could have imagined it, and being able to go on that trip was like a life-changing
And then
event.
going like with the Pistons, right? And going to a game and going to events.
Man,
and
it was crazy.
Producing shows. Like that's the difference is like, I don't know. You have to be delusional for sure, right?
Yeah.
Like in our work, like I'm delusional. I know I am. And sometimes it hurts me when I have to be realistic with my dreams and goals. And right now that's a phase I'm like going through is like, you have to be realistic. There's this doubt in you. Mm-hmm. But then there's also this crazy ambition of like wanting to show that there's another example and another way to live, that you don't just have to go work for somebody else, but it's a constant pull and it's a constant struggle. In my 20s, it didn't matter. I could be reckless, bro. I could be like, whatever, you know what I mean? I have so much more time. And one time I was talking to a coach who's on our board and really just one of the leaders in our community, Coach is in his 60s, and I'm sitting there and I'm mad. I'm like, Coach, man, I don't know if like I'm getting old for this. I'm cranky. I don't have patience for these young people. They're making me upset. And Coach in his coach way was to say, hey, you just got less time here. So your urgency is going to be different.
Yeah, that's so true.
And that shit sank so deep for me that it's like I want to be patient, but also think about it, bro. Like if I meet a young person that's doing work and they're 16, 17, I'm like way older than them now, right? So I'm going to have a different kind
urgency. That's crazy. I never thought of it like that. Shout
even
out
in your
Coach,
20s, bro. But even in your 20s, you got the whole world ahead of you.
Yeah.
I'm going to be real, bro. Like I'm 44. So if I was 35 right now, bro, I'd be feeling great. I'll be like, bro, I'm like, you know what I'm saying? But if I could have been where I'm at 35 at the moment, but you can't always judge it that way, right? Because I have plenty of friends that are not living fulfilled lives, you know, that are doing what they had to do. And, you know, more power to them. You know, everybody makes a decision. You know, I'll be on tour. I'll be on tour from time to time, be at universities, and you have somebody who has a high-level position is like, how do I do what you do? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, bro, you got the most stability. You live in a really nice house. You have all these opportunities, but they're just not happy.
Yeah, and that's the most important part, to be honest.
You can have everything around you, bro. Like, even for me, like, I feel pretty blessed. And there's times where I wake up and I'm like, bro, what am I doing? You know, like, I'm struggling. Like, what am I doing? Yeah. But I'm not hungry. You know what I mean? I got people that love me.
100%.
I got opportunities everywhere. You know, I'm in the richest country in history. And, you know, even though, you know, I struggle against some of those ethical questions, we're still here. We can hustle. We can do all kinds of things. And you still feel like this weight.
Yeah.
And some of it is a creative weight. And then some of it is just, you know, mental health and interpersonal stuff. You know, mental health is a big thing. Trying to get yourself better and stronger. And for me, I just start with smaller stuff, right? I'm trying to start with, like, man, just cleaning my house, getting in shape, being nicer to people, being more gracious. Because, bro, for a long time in the hustle, you just get bitter.
Yeah.
You know, you get upset, and you carry that weight with you, and it's not worth it, bro.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, you know, like I'm doing this thing right now where I'm trying to meet with everybody that I've ever kind of worked with in a close proximity and just try to air shit out and just be like, hey, bro, let's just figure this shit out because it ain't worth it, man. Mm-hmm. Like, you wake up, and if you wake up in a space where you have people that love you, that's a blessing.
Man.
Even just one.
So, yeah.
Because there's a lot of people that aren't with us, right, that didn't feel like they had that, you know, and aren't here with us anymore. Or, you know, I have a lot of like older relatives that had a really hard life. And it's hard for me to see them because they're just so distraught. And really the system has destroyed them to a point where they're miserable. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that. Because it's set up that way, you know? You're constantly fed you're not enough. You're constantly fed that your culture isn't right, that, you know, that it's unrealistic what you're thinking. Like, bro, I grew up in Saginaw, Michigan, bro. I grew up in a place that had very little resources. There was no youth programs when I was growing up. There wasn't no after-school programs. My mentors, thankfully, I had 3 to 4, 5 really strong mentors, like 5 really strong mentors. Fortunately, you know, they gave us some of those options in school. And then later on, we formed this club called La Diferencia when I was like 15, which took all the Latino clubs in the city. There was a bunch of different ones and put us all in one. But we weren't an official group. It was just 2 women, Mika and Val, and my mentor, Larry Rodarte, who runs a newspaper. And they just wanted to do something. They didn't know about nonprofits. They didn't know about grants. They didn't know about funding. All they knew is we got these kids and we want to do something with them that's positive. So we started like a public access radio show, TV show. We were at a radio show.
Interesting.
We did dances, like, you know, Mexican dances, raised scholarships. All that was embedded in me when I was like 14, 15, 16 years old. Because of Dr. Salazar, like when we just did this thing with Cinco de Mayo, and we had this Cinco de Mayo event that was shut down, right? Because of racism and, you know, all of these things that we deal with in our city about policing. But I thought about it. It made me think about it. And the first cultural event I ever threw was a Cinco de Mayo event when I was in the 8th grade.
Wow.
And I was responsible for putting it together at North Middle School, which is no longer there. They tore that school down. And it was in a gym. And Dr. Salazar, my mentor, I had him for 3 classes because the school system was like super cheap. So they were like, we're going to teach 3 classes. So he gave us a small budget. I think it was like $50. We made decorations, bought a piñata, bought some tacos, and we celebrated. But because of that, was embedded into me when I went to high school. I joined the Latino Action Club, which was run by this guy named Mr. Olvera. And he then mentored me. And then later on down the line, before I left Saginaw, I had these other. So these mentors, like when you say mentorship, bro, it's important. And you never know, because it could just be a statement. Mm-hmm. It could just be giving you a little bit of confidence. I had a teacher named Miss Curry when I was in 8th grade. I wrote this poem. And she was an older black woman. I wrote the poem. It was about racism, right? And she told me, like, hey, that was really good. You should write more. And because of that, it stuck. Even though I didn't go like through high school thinking I was a poet, it stuck.
Could be like the smallest thing that you carry on.
Bro, she probably didn't even know, like, her just giving me encouragement to say that I should, because she didn't say anything else about it after that. It was that one sentence, hey, you're really good. You should think about doing more. And I kept on writing. So I think like that mentorship piece.
100%.
And, this last few years, I'm just trying to reflect and figure out like what you want your legacy to be. Like, what do you want people to say about you when you're gone? What do you want to leave behind? What is the impact you want to make? And sometimes you have to deal with demons with that, right?
Yeah.
Because we're not always the best humans. And someone like me who's like super emotional and like can rage and slowly been trying to process like, what is the next phase of like, I've been here 12 years, so what's the next 10 look like for me?
Yeah.
I think it's important to always reevaluate. When I moved here, I had reevaluated. I was coming out of like some very, very toxic relationships. And I don't just mean like, with partners, just in general of how to behave and how to react. And you get to a point where you don't even know who you are, right? You feel like, damn, like I have to reevaluate. And I think that's okay. I think everybody has to reevaluate who they want to be, who you want your perception to be. Mm-hmm. But to me, that legacy piece of like, why am I doing all this? Because it's never to get rich, because if I wanted to get rich, I would be doing something else.
Right, 100%.
There's a million other things I could probably do that aren't as fulfilling, that don't have as much principle, that don't have as much ethics, that don't have as much impact, and just go work a regular 9 to 5 and not be wealthy, but be able to drive a nice new car. But some of us are not meant to do that, because no matter how far and how hard I've tried, I've been fired by 3 really good jobs. You know what I mean? Like,
it's like
they
kind of
were like, "Hey, bro, you should just be not there." I always say like, I'm the best person to work with if you want to work on some bigger shit, but I'm the worst employee. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm looking for a job right now. I'm the best employee that you'll ever know. But I saw this thing that they were talking about creatives, is that you bring a creative into your company and they are going to help you flourish. The problem is the minute you try to control them and give them some parameters, it's going to be very difficult for you, because creatives are already at a higher level in the sense of like taking risk and thinking through some of these problems. And so they're not going to necessarily fit into the system you have built around them. You almost have to like adjust. But you think about it, the most innovative people in our society sometimes don't always fit into that 9 to 5 kind of square. And there's nothing wrong with a 9 to 5. I always think as a young artist, you should have one.
Yeah, it makes it more
to keep your money going.
Yeah,
to be able to reinvest in yourself.
100%.
But I think as somebody who is a creative artist, it's hard for me. Like, I wake up really, really depressed days. Wake up really, really on other levels, other days. But generally, most days, I have some level of creativity that I want to do something. Sometimes it could be a simple thing as like, hey, I want to fix this wall and make it look cool. Or other days it's like, hey, I want to write this grant. Or other days it's like, I want to clean up the yard and make it look nice.
It's like
Other days I might want to write a book. But I think for anybody that's young out there, it's like, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to feel not worthy. It's okay to feel like you're not doing enough. The hard part in capitalism is it's designed to make you feel like you're not doing enough. Doesn't mean be lazy, right? Doesn't mean that there's an excuse. Because I do believe in structural racism, and it affects, and I believe like sexism, homophobia, all those things affect our opportunities.
100%.
But when it comes down to you being responsible for you, I think there's certain levels that we just have to make sure that we maintain that level of humanity for ourselves and dignity and respect. And it's not always easy, bro. I can say all these really beautiful things, and in my own life, it's really hard to balance because, like, we're humans.
100%, man.
We're humans, you know?
And it's a process. It's like it's the up and down, man. And, you know, I have a couple more questions for you.
Cool, I'm chilling.
I'm
drinking coffee.
I want to know, man. Tell me about the co-founder of Weird Culture Creators, and we need her on the episode.
Yeah, you gotta get her. She's here for 3 more weeks. So let's do this. I don't want to tell you about her. Just invite her to the interview next week.
Man. I love y'all camaraderie. I love what you guys have built.
I'll say this, like Elizabeth, with all the work that we've done together, is really the reason why we've been able to exist. Because there's a lot of times where we could have given up, and she could have just walked and given up, and she didn't. You know what I mean? In work like this, there is truly in our society that women do a lot of the backbone work and get pushed to the side, you know, in a lot of movements historically. I would say for our work, there's definitely a level that I'm the face of a lot of what we do, but by no means has that been like an imbalanced thing of like, you know, I'm doing more work and she's doing less. Just that you don't see her as much because that's really not what she likes to do. But I would say bring her in for an interview so she can talk about herself.
Oh, most definitely.
She also got a lot of dope stuff going on.
I can see that you guys have worked together to build like what you guys have done together is outstanding.
Yeah, and I would say like on a interpersonal kind of level, credit to her for being able to maintain it. Because to be a woman in this stuff and have to deal with all of this, like
100%.
And dealing with someone like me, bro, I am not an easy person to deal with, bro. I'm not an easy person to deal with. Even as a friend, I'm not easy to deal with. So I can't even imagine as somebody who was her partner for a bit. Like, it's crazy. I'm crazy, bro. I'm crazy.
You sound crazy. So, all right, tell me about this. I'm very interested in this, right? So I remember you said you never made poetry or music, but I seen you with John Legend. So I was...
Yeah, I mean, I do make poetry and music. I don't like to perform it live. I think I'm working on that. This next project I have 2 projects coming up. The first project is a book, and we're getting the artwork for the cover done. I have probably like 9 out of the 13 poems. I like to drop things in 13 because it's such a lucky number. And so it's called Children of the Sun Dance Under the Northern Lights.
Damn.
So it's basically just about Chicanos, Mexicans, Latinos in Detroit, Saginaw, even maybe a little bit of Chicago. And the experience that I have as a Mexican Chicano writer, right, as a poet, in my experiences growing up, covers a little bit of my family history, covers a little bit of political kind of like more generic general themes. And then I'm working on an album right now, which I haven't titled yet. I don't want to do like the book and the album the same because I feel like they're going to have different energy. Mm-hmm. So I do have this John Legend remix that should be dropping in July.
That's insane.
I have like 6 versions of it. I was asked to write a piece and contribute. So they sent me what he wrote, and it was from a poem. I mean, it was from a song by Nina Simone. And they gave me all the pianos and, you know, the vocals. And then I created a piece and I sent it back, and they didn't like it, which was hilarious to me. So I was like, well, like you kind of asked me for art. So is it art that you wanted, or did you want a commercial? They're like, I think we want something more collaborative. So they sent me some more ideas, and I incorporated these ideas, and we were able to create this really dope piece. Really just about like freedom and what it would feel like to be free as a person of color, right? So John Legend was on the keys and, you know, sang the hook and a few verses, and then I got 2 verses on the poem. So there'll be like, I don't know, like 6 versions of it that we're just gonna put out for free to people to kind of like almost like an EP. And then that should lead to my next project, which I'm hoping will be done in September, which I'm doing with Mosiah and a few other producers and artists that will come in.
Oh, dope.
The idea for me right now is we're working with Jack Daniels, and they're basically sponsoring part of like the project. So we're going to be doing like a release, and I'm just going to have artists kind of set up like this. We're just going to come in and work 4 hours every week for the summer and see what we create.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, I mean, like my last album was a solo album, so I kind of want this to be more collaborative, more fun, younger. I think Curtis Roach has committed to be on the project. What I really want to do is like have artists do poems with me, as opposed to me rapping with them, because I always feel like that comes off kind of corny if you're not that good of a rapper and you got someone as good as Curtis or Damasio or Be Free.
Yeah, you should get free.
You're trying. No, yeah, I asked him. I think like part of it is you, like I can't rap as well as them, so have them do poetry because I'm better at that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like have them do poetry and do some poetry with me.
I like that.
But it could be like some singing. It could be a little rapping. I don't know. It's going to be really free form. So like it took me to a point to feel like Culture Creators already has its own identity and aesthetic to like be like, all right, I can get back in. And it's difficult, bro. Like being a poet, you can write poets forever, bro. You can be a poet till you're 80. But you get like I get nervous if I still connect with that audience. And then when I did a few shows. I was on tour in the fall. I'm in the winter, and I did great. It was fine. I was like, okay, I still got a little bit of energy that I can contribute. And as an artist, you want to feel like you can contribute, right? And be like not just legacied in. You want to feel like, yo, you're contributing. You're a part of it. So this will be my first kind of like Detroit focused project.
I see.
And we're kind of going over which direction we want to go in. We definitely want it to be more of a like house techno mix, depending on where direction we feel.
Interesting.
I have some R&B singers that'll be on the project, so we might go into some like more R&B kind of like pop vibes. But
there's gonna be poetry. A screenplay behind it too. We have a different project for that, but okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's pretty sweet, man. You got some cool like that. That sounds cool as hell.
Yeah, but it's just like trying to be innovative, bro. Like, poetry is like one of the oldest forms of like art, right? So it's like, how do you take it and make it modern and make it fun? The hard part is always like a lot of my friends have been on different. Like I had a few friends on Kanye's project that wrote on that project, on a few of his like College Dropout, I think it was, or Late Registration. But I feel like as a poet, we're kind of always in the background, you know? So it's like trying to figure out how do we get that balance. Of like,
interesting.
I mean, you know, you like a lot of artists bring out, all right, put a poem at the end, it's a poem. You know what I mean? Like the song goes and at the end you drop a poem. Or at the beginning, put it in the intro. It's like, how do you become a part
like the main, like,
or just be a part of it, you know? Like just be a part of it, like more central piece, you know?
Yeah, that's it, man. I never even thought of it like that.
Think
like,
of all the poems you've heard on songs, bro. Where are they located?
Be the beginning or the very beginning or the very end. It's like, all right,
exactly.
Okay. Now that's what's up, man. So one segment that we always ask our guests to do is drop some gems, man. I want to hear like if you had some advice for the next inspiring entrepreneurs, business creatives, like what would you say?
Now I would say just don't listen to people that are not kind of in the same space that you're in at the same level. People will project their insecurities, fears, and failures onto you and tell you everything of why something can't be done as opposed to why it can be. And that doesn't mean you don't listen to people. What it means is be around people that are similar to you in the sense of like what level you want to land at, where you're at. Because those people will tend to still be realistic, but also like when you ask about Liz as a part of Culture Creators, like that's my go-to with ideas because 100%. She's going to have a perspective that it don't matter who it is that nobody else has. Nobody else has 12 years of struggling through this process and the ups and downs. So, you know, like she'll be one of the first voices. And, you know, if I'm doing Fiesta House, it's going to be EJ, right? If it's something more related to like visual side, it might be Barely Hispanic. But like that part of like keeping people, it's not about not listening to people. It's about keeping people that have similar visions, similar landing spaces as you. Because a lot of folks, and it's not like everyone, because we've had a lot of positivity. I just know the nature of people. They're going to tell you why it can't be done before they tell you how it can be done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just the nature of how people are, bro. It's how we're wired in capitalism. Keep you like in these boxes to be safe. And the other thing is, be willing to take risks, bro. None of this is easy. People think it's going to happen overnight. I mean, like, I've been at this particular project for 12 years, and me and Liz were in the car laughing about it because we had visited one of our friends who's pretty established, pretty wealthy. And we just started laughing, like wondering, like, well, when? Because she was, I came up poor. And we're laughing, like, when does that kick in? Like, when are you not poor? You know what I'm saying? Because, like, you know what I mean? Like, when does it happen for? But I think, like, taking risks, calculated risks. And I think for me, one of the big things is, like, trusting your own instincts. Like, for culture creators, in a lot of ways, like in movies, you ever see these movies where they play the scene out, the fight scene before it happens? Or like a sports scene and the guy sees it or the woman sees it before it happens. And it's like in slow motion. Like, my brain does that, for sure. Like, I can play out in my head, generally speaking, like the steps of what we have to do to get to where it's going to be to the next step.
I see.
So a lot of times, let's say for Backwards and Bonfires, bro, my brain is playing out what I have to do the next day and how it's going to look and how people are going to, like, before we do it. Mm-hmm. So with culture creators, like, I know the steps we have to take. And sometimes, bro, procrastination, laziness, like all of those things, being tired, come into play. And I have to fight through that. Yeah. So I think, like, that's also part of the game. It's natural to feel tired. It's natural to feel uninspired. Those are natural feelings. You just have to be able to work through them and be assured that at the end, as long as that's not like 365 days a year, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, 100%. Just trust in the vision that you have for yourself.
The overall goal, that why, you know what I'm saying? That reason is
like, every time I have to take some of these conversations with these corporations, bro, you sell a little bit of your soul, bro. It's like, and I don't mean it like in a fucking Illuminati way. I just mean, like, you literally have to, like, put on your best face in a sense.
I see.
And I try to be my authentic self as much as I can be, but you're in a professional world and there's expectations of you. You know what I mean? So not everybody in our group can do that, nor does it, nor would want to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
So that's my role. So I'm not complaining about it, but that's the truth. The truth is, like, I'm constantly chasing money and the shit is exhausting.
Yeah.
I'm constantly asking for money and it's exhausting. And at a certain point, like, there's certain people I ain't even gonna text them because I don't want them to think. I have to, like, preface it with, like, bro, this is me just looking out for you, not asking you for anything. Yeah. Like, for instance, one of our friends at the Pistons, sometimes there was something he posted and I was worried about him and I prefaced it, hey, bro, this is just friendship wise. I'm not even hitting you up about. Because 90% of our conversation is, how do we get money? How do we do this? How do we do that? How do we do an event? So that part of it is really exhausting.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a very important conversation because you don't even hear that in terms of the position that you are in like reaching out to these companies, like being the vocal point of the group, like the networker, the relationship builder is a huge strain, so that's a really important thing.
Yeah, the pressure of it is like, you struggle with, do you be your authentic self? And then you start questioning, like, you have to have a certain line of principles. Like, Culture Creators as an organization, we collectively decided to turn down a $90,000 contract because it didn't fit right with us, right, politically. But then you have all these other concessions you have to make to just survive, right? Because we are in capitalism. Regardless of how we may feel about how capitalism operates unethically, we are still in a space that we have to have bank accounts, that we have to have federal numbers, that we have to have credit scores, that we have to have all of these things in line. Because you can exist, I think, outside the margin somewhat. Like, there are really, really dope grassroots groups that do quality work, and they're going to be in those spaces, and they operate outside the margins. And when I say the margins, like, they can really, really decide heavily on what funds to take and what not to take. But that's going to limit the scope of what you can do financially. And then, the other struggle is you start thinking about the dollars and catching those dollars, and you struggle with thinking about the people that you serve.
Yeah.
And that's a constant battle, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you, and let's say on one end, the participants at our events, or like the young people we service, and the conversation becomes about funding. And so now, like, when I started, I might have spent 10% of my time looking for money and 90% of my time doing stuff. And now it's like 60, 70% of money conversations, of trying to find funds, of trying to get people to give you bread. I think the solution to that, though, is that we're on the right track, because on one level, trying to find funds that are self-sustaining is much more attractive than just being in the nonprofit industrial complex, which is like, it's like one of those hamster wheels.
I see.
You're chasing dollars and you're just stuck in there.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can find your own way to make funds, so like that's part of us doing activations is a way to do it, because we can get contracts, developing some affordable rentals that give us some stability. The farm project that we have in the Dominican Republic, with Conuco Criollo and Elizabeth and her work there, who's our other director of culture creators, but kind of has her own project overseas. All of those things lead to us being independent. But it's like starting a company, Yeah. And it's like starting a company with no finance, like you'd be surprised when you run into this business how many Nepo babies they are, like how many people come from money. Mm-hmm. But you can't look at that either, right? Yeah. Because there's nothing you can do. What you gonna do? You know what I mean? You either do it or you don't.
100%.
I've been reading some like self-help type books, right? And just trying to get my mind together. And they talk about balance, but in reality, when you're dealing with our community, balance is so hard, right? Like, yeah. Because, when you're trying to survive, there is no balance. Survival is the balance. So I don't ever want to lie to young people when they come up to me, because, I'm basically on the older side of millennial. Like, I don't even know, I might be months away from not qualifying for a millennial, right? But I think when somebody asks me that, like, oh, how do you balance everything out? And I had a conversation with somebody who was like 30, and she's a lawyer and very successful, based out of Chicago. And she asked me about balance, and I'm just like, there isn't any momentarily. Like, I don't feel like I have balance yet momentarily. I don't feel like that's my end goal. I would love to have some balance, but when you're pushing towards this other level of like opportunity, that's the hard part. I think we all should have balance if we were in a just society, right? And we weren't in this idea of like raw capitalism. I think people, have a right to joy and love and care. And we have a right to be able to relax and take time. Like when we're overseas, we travel to Europe quite a bit. There's just a different lifestyle for sure. And so there's like a different process, or if you're like, they call it like, island time if you're in the Caribbean but, I was raised in the mud out here. I was raised in Saginaw. I spent time in Chicago. I'm in Detroit for the last 11 to 12 years. And that grind is in you. So, yeah. Excuse me. So that grind is in you. So part of it is I sometimes don't even know how to exist without feeling that tension. It's like when you go to the gym for a year and you stop working out and your body starts to be like, hey, man, I want to feel like that contraction. Like my mentality is like, I want to feel that energy. I want to feel like that urgency of like having to do stuff, of having, like, I'm working on trying to have peace alone just to be like, and cool. But as soon as I get by myself, I want to build something. I want to clean something. I want to organize something.
Interesting.
So it never works.
You think it's like you built up habit over time that just like you said, you compared it to working out. It's like
it's a habit,
100%,
and it's also chemically connected to, at least from what I'm reading, chemically connected to like what makes me have endorphins is the excitement and the edge of an event, of a project getting completed or started or in the middle of it. Or a deadline, like I also am one of the co-owners of Backwoods and Bonfires. And honestly, bro, we went through so much hell trying to get that event to a legal status. Yeah. And there was so much tension. I mean, I lost a job. I lost like an actual 9-to-5 type of job because I was like, one of the owners. But all that tension and buildup, there is a chemical I get from it when it works.
Yeah. Seeing that that accomplishment come to fruition. 100%.
Yeah, and when it's done, and then you just kind of like breathe and then go.
You feel like the most like when you're accomplishing something, you feel the most like human, like who you are, basically, like in
Well,
terms
there's
of
like two places where I feel like the most like normal. One is on stage,
Okay.
when I'm performing poetry,
Interesting.
because I can do that at such a high level and enjoy it, and I feel like nothing else exists. I mean, maybe three. Like when I play basketball, right? Like I enjoy basketball. Like that's another place
for
where I
real?
just feel
Okay.
it's different because I'm not as good at basketball. You know, there I'm just like having fun, so there's no pressure.
Yeah.
But when I do poetry, and then when I'm creating events, like the adrenaline, but also like the calmness that I have to have in order to be successful at throwing an event is different than anything I had to have in my life, right?
Yeah.
So you can either yell at everybody and cuss everybody out, which, you know, happens, I'm human. But generally, when we're leading the builds and doing the events on Backwoods, like, bro, that's not even how we process stuff, right?
Yeah.
You're just trying to find a solution. We're human. We all have tempers. We all argue as owners and leadership. But the most successful way is just to be able to, like, communicate with people what you
Yeah.
want and how to achieve it. But sometimes deadlines don't allow you to do that, right? Like, we're opening we're opening in like 20 minutes and something's not done. You have to figure it out. Like we did that at one of the Backwoods. There was a banner that didn't go up.
Interesting.
So we call it fourth quarter, which just means like it's the last, 30 seconds of the fourth quarter or last
Yeah.
24.
It feels like that pressure, to be honest.
And so it's either you make the shot or you don't. And sometimes you don't. Sometimes things fail. But I think knowing that it's connected to a chemical, that's for me like that adrenaline, like I feel at peace when I'm in events doing them. And once they start, bro, it's like nothing like seeing someone interact with something you built, like watching them go from the stage to the VIP, go to experience the DJ booths, go to looking at the art, taking photos. But it's similar when I'm on stage.
Yeah.
Because on stage, I'm basically I'm the person conducting the event, right? Like I'm up there and I'm leading you through every emotion. And when I do poetry, there's no music, it's just me.
Yeah.
It's similar to comedy, but comedy to me is a much harder craft. Like seeing my friends that are comics, I tried to do comedy once and bombed. It was horrible. And I just started doing poetry, which was, thank God I could do poetry. But I think that chemical feeling, if you know and you're connected to it, as soon as like I'm not doing that, I get anxious. Mm-hmm. Like I always say, people are like, oh man, you can retire, in Puerto Rico or the DR or Mexico, and bro, I don't even know. Like, I mean, I know right now at 44 that how I feel. Like, I always feel like if I went to, let's say, I moved to Dominican Republic on some of the property that we have there as a collective, bro, I'd start a program. I already know I would, bro. There's already a kid down there that we're trying to get some equipment to DJ. I already know we'd be doing events. Like, there's nothing in my DNA. Like I moved to Detroit, kind of like leaving a whole history in Chicago of doing like youth work that I didn't want to do. And then now we have culture creators, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't a plan. It wasn't like I'm going to move to Detroit and buy something and start a nonprofit, right? I fell in love with someone. They happened to be very ambitious. And when you are with somebody really ambitious and you have some of that ambition in you, they bring out the best in you, right? Like
100%.
Had I not met Elizabeth, who's like, my ex-girlfriend, but also like my current business partner, had I not met her, I probably wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because you, like somebody that is that ambitious either brings that out of you or you're just going to split up.
Yeah.
And we both have that kind of neurotic, like ability to risk everything. Like we've risked our bank account probably 7 times together. She's here, I don't know, 7 times you say? Probably 30 times. Like we just go for zero. And it's insane because it's scary.
Yeah.
Like, but if you believe in what you're doing, but you have a plan, because even right now, bro, we're always like out here in the wilderness trying to figure it out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. We've lost things. We've had things burn down, properties. We've had projects fail. We've had things not work out. We've had people not pay us the amount they said they're going to pay us. We've had all of those experiences. But on a human level, there is a reason why successful people within our culture, let's say this culture, are able to push out. So as like people of color, it's 10 times harder for us, right, to push out and to be successful and create generational wealth and opportunity than it is for maybe somebody that doesn't come from our background, right?
100%.
We didn't come from money. We didn't come from that opportunity. You know, I'm the grandchild of farm workers, assembly line workers. Like, my mother worked in the fields. I worked in the fields as a teenager. And I think, like, part of, like, Elizabeth's experience, you know, her people fled Mississippi at night because they were sharecroppers and somebody didn't want to pay them fairly and end up here in Detroit. When you come out of that background, it's even more difficult to create some level of opportunity, but yet here we are.
Yeah.
You know, here we are
100%.
able to smile and laugh and tell jokes and love and care and experience joy and love. But it's not easy, you know, and I'll say this, you know, like, the last probably 11 years, bro, I had to create this character in a sense to even survive in that business side of, like, you get into a habit of having to be so cutthroat and tight that you take that home with you and you can't let it go. And the people closest to you that you care about feel that.
100%.
That coldness, that sharpness. And I'm just now, probably after, you know, 20 years of that behavior, figuring out, like, yo, like, that might not be the best way to be, because you create a character to survive in white supremacy. That's the truth, is like, I created this character to be able to survive, to be able to communicate, to be able to not get taken advantage of, to be able to not be able to be pushed over financially, deals, anything, because everybody's trying to take advantage of you when you hit a certain level of success. I shouldn't say everybody, because we've had good experiences with businesses, but I think there are a lot of folks out there.
Systematically, pretty much.
Yeah, that's what I mean, more so, because in all honesty, a lot of the people we've worked with on corporations and nonprofits, I mean, they're really good people, like 90% of them. But you do become accustomed to have to speak a certain way and be assertive to be heard. And I'm a man, right?
100%.
So imagine for a woman of color, a black woman, it's even harder, right?
Harder,
or a
100%.
queer black woman, or whatever category you want to put forward. So for me, who's somebody who presents white, who English is my first language, I have some college background, and to be able to have to deal with that still, so I can't even imagine being, like, you know, a young black woman from Detroit having to deal in that space. It's even harder, right? So I think that's the difficulty of like, trying to do some of this work, is trying to keep your humanity.
100%.
I mean, even in music, art, whatever you're doing, keeping humanity is really difficult. And to be still a whole human, you know, let's add in alcohol and add in drugs and, you know, substances, add in sex. You add all those things into the mix, bro. It's chaotic if you're not rooted or grounded.
100%.
Because any one of those things in excess can be bad for you. Especially being in, like, the music business and being in arts and entertainment, bro. Like, alcohol's everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and for me personally, I have to take time where I don't drink alcohol consciously. Because it's a slippery slope. You know, alcoholism in my family and my background. And there's been times where it's been really bad, and I've had friends be like, hey, man, you should probably think about it. You know, you might want to, like, in this business, it's a slippery slope. You could fall into something where you're drinking every day. So I would say in the last 3 years, consciously, I have to take time off purposely. And, like, I have liquor in my house, and sometimes I look at it and be like, man, that drink.
Yeah.
And I have to be like, nah, bro, like, you know, you made a
100%.
commitment. I noticed when I start working out, taking care of my body, and, you know, like, I lost some weight on purpose, dealing with some mental health stuff and trying to work through that stuff. I noticed I want to drink less. You know what I mean?
100%.
But I'm a social drinker, so I try not to drink alone. If I drink alone, I know there's something going on. I'm like, all right, what's going on, bro?
Yeah.
The only time I like to drink alone is if I'm cleaning my house. That time, then I, like, you know, if I'm, like, mopping and cleaning up, you know, cleaning up my clothes and laundry and all that, I might have a drink then. But if I'm just chilling and I'm doing that, I'm like, man. But those are all human vices, right?
Yeah. 100%.
And it's complicated because you can take someone like a genius artist, and if we look at genius, it doesn't mean that because, like, I think there's, like, a trope that every genius artist is crazy or has bad behavior, and I don't think that's true, but I do think there's a thin line between being creative and that side of your brain and destructive behavior. Not with everyone, but a lot of us.
Yeah.
You know,
100%.
I was straight edge till I was like 30. I didn't drink alcohol,
Really?
do anything till I was 30 years old.
Interesting. What made you try it?
I had made it through my 20s alive and felt like, okay, well, at least I made it through my 20s. Had I been drinking like most of my friends when they started were about 13 years old, I definitely wouldn't be alive. There's no way, bro. I'm too reckless. There's no way that I would have made it from 13 to 30 in that span of, what is that, like 17 years, and I was drinking because I would take too much risks. I probably would have crashed. Like my dad crashed a few cars, shout out to my dad, you know what I'm saying? Hopefully you don't watch this. But he was young, you know what I'm saying? He crashed a few cars drinking alcohol, when he was in his younger days. But I think that's why that discipline of like, I knew I would probably, that's why I'm not heavy on certain substances. I just know that, like, I don't want to fall into that path, and I'm like already at this point where I don't want to alter that chemistry in me,
100%, especially within our field, it's like that susceptibility to like alcohol.
I mean, we know. We're in the art scene. We know like
100% is there,
and it's hard because again, there's some people that can do that stuff. Like I'm the type of person I could drink all night and wake up in the morning and go work a job that's physical. Mm-hmm. Like I just have that in me. Go to a meeting and be fine, but because I can do that, it could even be more dangerous for me because I could be like, well, I mean, I could just, there'd be times where I would drink all night, be up and do a keynote, right? But that's not how I wanted to present my work. You know what I mean?
100%.
Because it's still suffering in some way. Like I'm not a creative though that creates when I'm like on substances. I know people do that. I don't. I don't like to have anything to chemically throw me off.
Interesting. It's like
especially
more,
like if it's cannabis or alcohol. Like I want to be sharp.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I don't even sound the same when I record that way. Like I don't perform. If I have a performance like where I'm going to actually perform work, generally I wouldn't drink until after the performance because I don't want to feel slowed. Like my cadence is so fast. I'm not saying that I've never had, but if I'm being paid for a gig, I definitely wouldn't perform. Mm-hmm. I would be like, oh, I'm not going to drink. I'll perform first, and then,
No,
but it's being conscious, bro. Like it's being conscious of your limitations. Like,
that's great advice.
Yeah,
100%, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the invite.
I appreciate you coming out. Please drop your socials. Where can they find you?
Yeah, man, just Reyes Poetry for me on everything. My website is reyespoetry.com. And then for our organization, it's just We Are Culture Creators. It's all spelled out. weareculturecreators.com, at We Are Culture Creators. You can find us on IG, and that leads to everything we do.
Oh, yeah. All right. Bet, man. Hey, cool. Reyes, man, it was a pleasure. Thank you again. Guys, remember, we're dropping episodes weekly. Reyes, special guest, man. You guys will see more of him. Liz, coming up very soon. We Are Culture Creators in the building. You know what I'm saying? And, hey, catch y'all later. Peace.
Peace. Thank you.
Of course, man. Thank you, bro. This was dope as hell.
Yeah, it was fun.